Hello everybody, Dragonfire here, and it's time for another one of my videos in my series of my all-time NBA teams. And for today's episode, we got the Indiana Pacers. Now, I believe when I started this series, uh, I believe I started it while the NBA Finals were still going on at the time, or maybe just after they had finished the NBA Finals for 2025. And um, Of course, that was between the Indiana Pacers and the Oklahoma City Thunder. And the Pacers didn't end up winning. They ended up losing in the NBA Finals. But still, it was only, I believe, the second time in Indiana Pacers histories that they had ever been to the NBA Finals. And um, without a doubt, it was a tremendous showing from Tyrese Halliburton. Um, and without him, they would not have gotten to the NBA Finals for sure. The other time they had been to the NBA Finals, uh, they did it with Reggie Miller on the team, who is a lot of people's pick for the greatest Indiana Pacer of all time. And this is one of the harder teams to look at, really. They have a kind of complicated history. They actually started out in the ABA, and they were one of the uh, better teams of ABA history. They were a fairly good team in the late 60s for the first couple of seasons of the ABA, and then in the early 70s, they really came into their own, winning three championships in like the early to mid 70s in the ABA. So they have three ABA championships, but have only been to the NBA finals twice and haven't won any championships in the NBA after the merger, the ABA NBA merger. So yeah, they did start out as an ABA team, um, and they're hard to judge for that reason. How do you stack their three ABA championships against their NBA history, and so on? So, um, with the Indiana Pacers, I have um, put Tyrese Halliburton as the point guard for the starting lineup. I got Reggie Miller as my shooting guard. For the small forward, I'm going with Roger Brown, who won a playoff MVP um, back in the ABA days. I've also got George McGinnis as my power forward. He was he was a regular season ABA MVP as well as a playoff MVP in one of their championship seasons as well. And at center, I have Mel Daniels, who won uh, two regular season ABA MVPs. Off the bench, I got Freddie Lewis, who won a playoff MVP. So those um, for their three championships in the ABA, they have three playoff MVPs, which was basically the ABA's version of the NBA's Finals MVP. It was actually created the year before, so the playoff MVP in the ABA came before the Finals MVP in the NBA. But yeah, I've got Roger Brown, George McGinnis, and Freddie Lewis, who all won playoff MVP during those three championship years for the Indiana Pacers back in the ABA. Another player coming off the bench, I got Ron Artest, who would later change his name to like Meta World Peace or whatever, but he did win a DPOY as an Indiana Pacer. I believe he was also a member of that team that made it to the NBA Finals in 2001, where they lost to the Los Angeles Lakers. Reggie Miller was definitely on that team. Another player who I think was also on that team was Dale Davis. Um, Rick Smith was a longtime center for the Pacers in the 90s. Then you have Billy Knight, Vern Fleming, uh, Miles Turner, Danny Grunger, Jeff Foster, and Jermaine O'Neal. I have rounding out the rest of my bench. So here you go. Hopefully that's the yellow print there is not too hard to read, but I'll give you a chance to take it in there. That's my all-time Indiana Pacers team. And again, this one was very hard to calculate, because how do you calculate ABA success versus NBA success? But I thought 3 championships, they were a little like dynasty there in the early 70s in the ABA. I think won 3 championships in 4 years. So yeah, and they went to the ABA finals like 4 or 5 times in the early years of the ABA. So yeah, because I believe they lost in the finals in '69 and then won their first ABA championship in '70. I think they won '70, '71, and '73. I probably should have written that down. But anyway, yeah, there's my all-time Indiana Pacers team. I'm giving some weight to some of the all-time greats from the ABA, in George McGinnis and Mel Daniels, Roger Brown, Freddie Lewis, for the greatest players in ABA history, which turned uh, those early 70s ABA teams into a dynasty there for Indiana. Like I said, 3 championships in 4 years, I believe it was. So yeah, um, they were the only team to win 3 ABA championships. So the best team in ABA history. But of course, everyone recognizes how great they were with Reggie Miller in the 90s and into the 2000s. The 20 singles, Reggie Miller was still a fantastic player. Um, Finally leading them to the NBA Finals in 2001. Arguably, by that point, he wasn't even any longer the greatest player on the team, or it was more, he may have still been the best player on the team in some respects, but it was definitely a group effort, a team effort that got them to that finals in 2001. But he was definitely one of the outstanding greatest players of the 1990s. Perhaps a bit underrated for what he did for the Pacers in the starting with his rookie year in the late 80s and going in throughout the decade of the 1990s. So, yeah, uh, that's my all-time Indiana Pacers team. Did I leave anybody out? Would you have a different starting lineup? Let me know in the comments section. Dragonfire out.